A man suddenly has a flash of inspiration while looking in the mirror and thinks of a design that could save millions of lives. At that time, all car windshield wipers were swinging at a constant speed, unable to adjust the speed based on the amount of rain, and they often made a noise from friction. The constant swinging frequency was like a hypnotic pendulum, affecting driving. However, if the windshield wipers were turned off, the driver could no longer see the road. And the human eyelid only blinks when it's dry. If the wipers could blink like the human eye when needed, it would greatly reduce driving risks. Kreins, a physics professor, immediately began studying his own car. He used electronic components to intervene in the motor's operation, and then used a bimetallic timer to change the interval time of the wipers. He shared the principle with his sons. After countless experiments, a wiper similar to the human eye was finally created. He stared at his research results for several minutes, and his family excitedly watched. But no one knew the true value of this small invention. Later, Kreins went with his family to a restaurant to celebrate. He told his children that in his country, 2 million cars were produced every year. If all of them were installed with his designed wipers, the profits would be astronomical. The next day, Kreins found a friend who made car glass and showed his invention to the capitalists present. The owner of the car company understood the significance of the invention. This was a problem that all major car companies were struggling with, but a university professor had beaten them to it. At this point, Kreins wanted to mass-produce the wipers, but the boss poured cold water on him, saying that there was a huge difference between inventing and producing, and the key was the financial backing. Fortunately, his friend helped him connect with Ford, which expressed interest in the invention. In the 1960s, Ford was already well known worldwide. This news made Kreins ecstatic. If Ford invested, the mass production of his design could begin. So Kreins immediately drove his modified car and did multiple tests along the way. When he arrived at Ford, preparing to demonstrate the wipers, he moved the car back a few meters to avoid the other parties seeing his technology. After the wipers began working, the Ford R&D manager repeatedly praised the design, but also raised doubts, suspecting that Kreins was controlling the wipers manually. To dispel these doubts, Kreins' friend asked him to get out of the car to prove it. Once the wipers started swinging intermittently, the manager immediately agreed to cooperate and said the quicker, the better. However, what Kreins didn't know was that a huge capitalist scheme was waiting for him. When Kreins and Ford were discussing terms, they proposed buying his patent outright, but Kreins firmly opposed it. He only wanted to get investment to control the production himself. Ford then agreed but required a prototype to be sent to headquarters for approval before continuing the cooperation. Since Kreins had already applied for the patent, he trusted Ford and provided a sample. Without signing any contract, Ford took his intermittent wipers. Kreins thought everything was falling into place, having already selected a location for production. But his friend brought him devastating news: Ford wanted out. Kreins was stunned and could not recover for a long time. Without any contract signed, a university professor could never compete with these corporations. Faced with a newly built factory and a large business loan, Kreins found himself trapped in a huge whirlpool, lost and powerless. The worst part was that, not long after, on a rainy night, Kreins watched as several Ford cars, equipped with his proud intermittent wipers, sped past him, leaving him standing in despair. Realizing something was wrong, he immediately followed the cars to a Ford new car launch event. Amidst the crowd, Kreins witnessed the biggest betrayal. Ford's new car's main selling point was his own intermittent wiper. Furious and unable to vent his anger, Kreins saw Ford's boss and tried to confront him, but was immediately kicked out by security. Feeling powerless, Kreins couldn't resist. Kreins sought out his friends to sue Ford, but they felt that taking on such a commercial giant was impossible. His friend, who had helped him originally, also refused to act because Ford was his main client, and he didn't want to cut off his income stream. Kreins understood it was all about survival, so he didn't feel anger, just silence. He had to face everything on his own, but the burden he had to bear was far greater than he could manage. The pressure eventually broke him, and he was sent to a mental hospital for rambling incoherently. "Do you want to continue fighting this?" the doctors asked. No, I don't," he replied. 3 months later, after promising not to file any further lawsuits, he was released and returned home. His family seemed to return to normal, but the scars from Ford remained. Kreins' eyes no longer had the same light. Over time, unable to tolerate it any longer, Kreins hired a lawyer. With the help of the lawyer, Ford responded, offering $250,000 to make him stop pursuing the issue, to prevent him from further challenging the patent. Both the lawyer and his wife felt it was a good deal, but Kreins refused the settlement. What he wanted was an apology and acknowledgement of the wrongdoing. "If you're really thinking of turning this down, going to court, it's a very expensive proposition. It's not a good play," the lawyer warned. But Kreins was not talking about playing games. He needed Ford to admit their theft. Ford knew the immense power they held, their wealth, their time, and their resources. They could drown Kreins in a sea of legal paperwork and never-ending injunctions. But Kreins still chose to reject them. Eventually, the pressure from the case spread to his family. His wife, unable to endure it any longer, left him, taking the children with her. Kreins had lost his friends, and now, his family too. Now, he truly fought alone, but his only belief was persistence. Every evening, Kreins immersed himself in the library, learning everything about patent law, preparing for the legal battle. He was determined to fight the corporate giant with his own strength, his mind, his words. Years passed, and one day, Kreins turned to his son for help, asking him to become his defense lawyer. But his son resented him for abandoning the family for so long, so he refused. Meanwhile, Ford, aware of the new patent laws, approached Kreins again to settle. This time, they offered him $1 million, enough to change the family's future. But Kreins still demanded an apology, and if they refused, it would be back to court. Ford, unwilling to admit their theft, turned down Kreins' demand. In the end, Kreins stood firm. After 12 years, his perseverance paid off when the jury ruled in his favor. Ford was ordered to pay $10 million in compensation, and Kreins later filed lawsuits against other companies that had copied his invention, winning a total of $28.7 million in damages. Kreins had washed away 12 years of humiliation by sticking to his beliefs and fighting for justice. Even today, standing up for one's rights against huge organizations requires immense courage. Some people are willing to pay the price for standing against injustice, not just for themselves, but for all of us, to correct the wrongs in the world. This is why these people deserve our respect. Movies are an art form that resonates deeply, and only by experiencing the original story can we truly understand the struggles. See you at the next corner.